What's up, folks? Thanks for joining me today. This is my first interview of the new year, and I couldn't be more pleased about who it is. Here at History Before Us, I'm dedicated to exploring the hidden narratives, forgotten voices, and underrepresented histories that have shaped our world. Whether through documentaries, interviews, or site visits, I am pleased to bring these stories to light and share them with you. So please make sure to subscribe and share with a friend. Now, on to my guest, the songstress and history keeper within her own right. I am going to ask her to introduce herself, but first, let's welcome Mahogane. Mahogane, we got through the introduction.
Thank you.
What's up, sister? How are you doing today?
I am doing blacktastic.
Love it as
an
always.
Honor to be with you. It's always good to share time and space with you, right?
Right. Likewise.
Yes.
So let's open up the door and let people know who Mahogane is.
You know, we're ever-growing people. It's always weird for me to have to answer this question, but I am an interdisciplinary artist, right? And music is at the core of everything that I do. And that also entails weaving our history and our stories into the music. And it includes visual art, it includes poetry, it includes setting a stage to give the audience an experience. And I'm a Gullah woman. And so it's interesting to just be an artist in 2025, right? We find out things all the time that we can, and for me, when I find out more information and more history, it's empowering.
Yes.
Like I feel like as a superhero power, you know, it strengthens me. And so that's who I am today.
That's who you are today, right? Because that can be fluid, right? Like we're not putting ourselves in anyone's box. You know what I'm saying? And I think that throughout this interview, people will have a better understanding of just how multifaceted your skill set and the gifts that the Creator blessed you with, what those things are, just hopefully through some of the questionings that I have for you today. So obviously we have a commonality, and that's this thing called history. I met Mahogane on Instagram. And you know how you gravitated to someone's page because you see what they do and their mission, and you just see that the work that they're putting in, and they're not trying to be who they aren't, right? And I just saw that with her, and she saw that with me, and I don't know who followed each other first, but since then we've just been locked in, right? And it's just been great knowing you and your camp and everything that you do, and following just how you have matriculated over the past 4 or 5 years that we've been following each other on social media and seeing all of the things that you've been able to accomplish. So I just want to first give you a shout out and commend you on that type of growth that you've done over the years, for sure.
Thank you.
No problem. And I always start off with this question, or something that's kind of related to it, is when did you fall in love with history, and how was it growing up in a small town in South Carolina? And so it's a two-part question. So when did you fall in love with history, and what was it like growing up in a small town South Carolina, and what do small town values mean to you based on what it is that you learned on the history?
I will say that I fell in love with history when I moved back home to South Carolina. And that was 2010.
Okay.
And so, and I always tell people, I feel like I also found myself when I moved back in 2010. Not even know that I had been searching, right?
Okay.
But
where were you at previously?
So my husband and I were where were we? We had traveled so much. We were in D.C.
Okay, you were in D.C.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we were in D.C. And so coming back home to South Carolina, and specifically, I came back to St. Helena Island, South Carolina, which is where my sister and her husband were living. And keep in mind, this is only an hour away from where I was born, right? Summerton, South Carolina. And I lived my entire adult life up to that point, not knowing about the history of the Gullah people, not knowing about our connection to this history, that's just an hour away.
Yes.
And so that's when I found my superpower, and that's when I fell in love with history because I just kept wanting to know more.
Yeah, most definitely. And so,
And
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, and so beautiful, right? And I always think like there's this when people are able to kind of come back and reclaim themselves
Mm-hmm.
in a space in which they knew previously to be one way, and then they go out and give the lived experience and come back home and are looking through their lenses from a completely different point of view based
Yeah.
on what it is that you've experienced up until that point. Looking back at the time in which you did grow up in that small town, how did that transfer over into what values you were able to create for yourself today?
So growing up in Summerton, South Carolina, it's interesting because my husband's from DC. I'm from South Carolina. We
Mm-hmm.
both grew up like the opposite of each other, but when we had one commonality, everybody was black in our experience.
Yeah.
I had black teachers, an all black school. Everything was black. And not understanding how important that was, but also how much history I did not know and how much history we were not taught, how much they're probably still not teaching to this day. Because something that happened an hour away and we don't talk about it, it just it baffles me.
That's,
And
that's
so
wild.
going out
Yeah.
yeah, going out into the world and finding out what it is to live outside of your small town. Because I literally left the day after high school. I was like, I have to get out of here. And I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what I was running towards, but understanding that I didn't really know who I was until I ran back, to the small town.
Mm-hmm.
And but the importance of embracing who we are and where we come from, again, that is the superpower.
Yes.
Because I feel like the world wants us to never know who we truly are. Because once you know who you truly are, then you walk taller.
Mm-hmm.
You feel more confident. You can look people in their eyes, and you can meet people exactly where they are. And when you don't know
Yes.
yourself, you kind of hunch down a little bit, right? And you're
Mm.
not as strong-willed and strong-minded as you can be if you truly know yourself and you know your history and you embrace it and you see it as something special and something beautiful and not something small.
Yes.
And if you see it as something small, you understand that it's small just in the bigger picture of all these other small places that make something big and that make
Mm.
something magical. And that's what I revel in now. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
always talking about my superpower coming from my hometown and from South Carolina, but then also from Africa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And you said that so eloquently, and that kind of goes into my another question that I had for you is that if you knew then before you left at 17 what it is that you know now, how would have that shaped your worldview differently when you were going out into other
Yeah.
spaces, whether it was living in DC, living in Atlanta,
Yeah.
if you ever lived in Houston, if you ever lived in Indianapolis, and I'm just throwing out places,
Yeah.
right? But just like, how do you feel your approach to life would have potentially been then, uh, well armed and equipped with knowing who you actually were?
I feel, and I feel a lot, but I
Mm.
think had I left home knowing more about who I was and where I came from, then when somebody said, "Oh, you sound country," you talk with a little twang, or
Yeah.
it would not have felt like something negative.
Yes.
And I would not have tried so hard to be something other than that.
Mm.
And I feel like I would have, because in my journey of being an artist, we are always, I think, searching for who do I want to be, as an artist. Who do I want to be in whatever it is that you're creating? And had I
Yes.
known sooner who I was, I think I definitely would have created differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have created from a more loving, true, authentic Black space, right? Had I known that the way my auntie and uncle talk was Gullah, and it
Mm-hmm.
was something special and something magical and something really created from the beginning of whatever this thing is in America.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a part of that
Yeah.
history because South
Mm-hmm.
Carolina is a part of that history. And so,
Yeah.
had I known that, walking out, had I been able to carry that as a crown,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, I definitely would have, everything would have been different.
Everything would have been
Yeah.
different. Yeah. You said something very important because when people would say you talk with the twang and all those other things, that if you were well equipped with knowing who you were, and of course we're still in that process of growing, but you would have
Yeah.
had a better context of who you were, that you would have stepped into that and embraced it a little bit more. And when you said that, it made me think about my own life because I was raised in a town called Clarksville, Tennessee, and I would always, when people would ask me where I'm from, I would say Clarksville. We're 30 minutes outside of Nashville, and I
Mm.
and I would always add that.
Yeah.
It was just automatic because I felt as if it was just too small
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't perhaps have a big enough character. So, in order to make people understand from a proximity standpoint and maybe even from a cultural standpoint, it's 30 minutes from Nashville. Like
Yeah.
every time, right? And I don't do that anymore. I say, and I wait for someone to say, oh, okay, well, maybe they may say, well,
Right.
where that's
Yeah.
at? Where is that? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, right? It's because of those not insecurities, but it's just one of those things to where it's just like, well, I'm going to have to provide a reference point as if the history within those places or the people within those
Yeah.
places weren't revered enough themselves. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
so you just brought that insight to me in some of the things that I would do my own self as well. So thank you for that, sister. You are a multifaceted artist and amazing at so many different things that you do. And I just have to ask, where did you gain your inspiration from in all of these different phases of artistry
Mm.
in which you're involved in? And you hear some people say, "Oh, well, it is." If it's an artist in 2025, they may say it was somebody from 2010,
Right.
2012, right? People in our generation, I would think you may go back a little bit further as it relates to from an artist who inspires you. But because you're such a deep thinker, I don't necessarily think it's a person solely that
Right.
inspires your work, right? I think it's this whole ecosystem of something that inspires you. And I may be speaking for you, but I would like for you to express all those elements that inspires Mahogane.
And you're right. It is an ecosystem. But what I will say again, once you begin to find out more about your mom and your dad and your aunties and everybody before you, it
Yeah.
gives you a clear vision of why you have some of the gifts that you have. Where did they come from? Ultimately, we
Mm-hmm.
know God blessed us with these gifts, but our they also had these gifts. And
Yes.
my auntie, who I believe we just celebrated her 85th birthday, I think 85.
Okay. Happy birthday,
And
Auntie.
last year, I think it was either 2024 or 2023. She came and spent some time with us. And she was just talking about how back then, right, everybody had a piano in their house, right, when she was growing up. And her mom or her grandmom was a singer. And I had never heard this story before from my mother. My mother sang, right? And my dad was also very talented as a visual artist. But just as an entrepreneur, they both had that energy and that spirit. But when she told me about the musicians, right, that have been, that are in my ancestry and in my history, and I was, for some reason, it just, like another little light bulb went off. Right? So it wasn't just my mom and my dad. Okay, but now my grandmother or my great-grandmother, also played the piano and they sang. And I feel like that also feeds into the type of musician that I have grown into. And it also feeds into where the history comes into the music. Because I say to my husband sometimes, I'm like, where are these lyrics coming from? Where are these words coming from? Because it's not something that I remember reading. It's not something I remembered experiencing. And so I feel like our ancestors, they're woven into our tapestry, right, of our artistry. And that again makes me feel powerful when I'm on stage, because the statement, your ancestors are with you, when you can tie that to your own experience, when you can make it, your own reality, it makes it more powerful. And it's also more spiritual. And it solidifies you in a way to yourself, if that makes sense. Right? So, and I probably got away from the question, but
no, you're spot on. No, you're spot on as it relates to the inspirations.
So that's where the history is coming from, a place of hunger, right? Because now I want to know more. It's making me stronger, and so the more that I learn, and then also I'm giving other people the confidence to be themselves, because I don't have to draw from anything outside of me anymore. I don't have to draw from other artists. Now I can actually draw from my own DNA, my own history. And to me, that's where the real power lies. That's where your authenticity comes from. And you don't have to worry about trying to sound like anybody else or be anybody else, because it's literally, it's the DNA. It's already in you, and you're pulling from that.
Yes. You said it's interesting being an artist in 2025. Was some of the things in which you just mentioned that you don't necessarily have to do, that you see other people doing in 2024, 2025, 2023, 2022, perhaps not necessarily finding an authentic sound?
Yeah.
Was some of that something that you were referring to with saying it was interesting in being, being an artist?
It is, because a lot of times when I hear a song now, and I'm like, I don't know who that is, because there are literally 50 other artists with the same, they do the same riffs. It's like there's a thing in the voice of an era. You know what I'm saying? And so like artists they may be 20 or 25 years old now, but there's something about them that sounds the same, because they're either listening to the same person, they're studying this person or that person, and so now it's what their voice sounds like. Whereas I didn't have to do that. I literally just let me take that back, because Donny Hathaway Baker,
Love
right?
them.
Phyllis Hyman,
Yeah.
James Ingram. Like those are people that I listen to,
Yeah.
and but I didn't feel like I needed to sound like them.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Did you
And
feel as if you were, or that you are an extension of who they are, and to where you don't necessarily have to be in sound exactly like them, but your specific, unique voice and your approach to it is like, because all of those are very unique artists. Like you're going to know
exactly,
who they are. You know what I'm saying?
exactly,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Good.
And what I do remember doing was instinctively harmonizing with them,
Mm.
right? Because I didn't take chorus, right? I had never been in any music class throughout elementary to high school. I just, I was alone. I was alone a lot of the time.
Mm.
And so I would just listen to them and oh, well, let me try above, their voice or lower. And it was things that I was just doing instinctively. And again,
Yeah.
I feel like that's where the heritage, in your history comes from. Is some things are not taught. You just instinctively
Mm.
know to do them. And I
Yes.
feel like that's what made me um a different or made a difference. I'll put it that way. In me just singing and not, really wanting to sound like anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And all the artists, a lot of people slip on James Ingram. Man,
Oh
love the
man.
voice of
And
James
Roberta
Ingram,
Flack,
man. Yes, yes, she from Black
there's
Mountain, not too far up the mountain. Yeah,
yeah, there's a sweetness that was always in and Marvin Gaye.
yeah. Jeffrey
It's something
Osborne.
in
Jeffrey
there.
Osborne is another one. Yeah, yeah. Jeffrey
Yeah, it's
Osborne is another one that I really really enjoyed his voice, and
yes, absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
just so, man. We can go on and on and on, right? And the thing is, even when when you're talking about Roberta Flack, like we're not super aged, right? But the music that we were exposed to
Yeah.
in the different uh, decades and the different generations, every generation sounded different
Yeah.
from a soulful standpoint,
Mhm.
but the elements were all the same. And
Yeah.
now it's just that all the elements are the same and everybody sounds the same. So
Yeah.
that's the difference to me. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And again, this is completely subjective. So if you're younger watching this and listening to this, you can get mad all you want, but I'm just telling you the truth. And it is what it is. Um,
Here,
so,
before we leave
go,
this point, I want
sure,
to.
sure.
Here's another perspective that I have because so with the internet now we have videos of everybody, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have a where people will create a series and say, who can do this riff, right? Or who can do let's hear your version of this artist or that artist, and that also feeds into me beginning to sound like you
Mm,
instead of me just sounding like myself.
yes.
And you also have a music industry where they've always wanted a cookie cutter approach, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's another reason why you have so many of the same thing. But the
Yes.
artists outside of that, the internet it's really kind of taken away from authenticity, to a certain degree, which is
True.
why I don't listen to a lot of other music, especially when
Mm,
I'm trying to write and when I'm recording but I don't want it to feed into me,
mm-hmm.
to the point where you're hearing it and be like, oh, I hear that little da 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 da. I don't want that like at all.
Yes. Yeah.
So I stay away from these trying to do this riff or like I've always just I stay away from that.
Steer cleared from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what makes you authentically you, and it's worked for you, which leads into my next question. Because of your dedication to your craft, history, and its preservation, it's gotten you to places and rooms that I'm sure, as a young child growing up there in a small town, South Carolina, that you may not have even thought you would have been in. And so, how has this um, uh, skill set that you have, how has it provided you with a global experience? And is it something that you felt like you've always thought was going to go down, or is it something that was just like, didn't expect it, thank God for it, I'm here, ready to take full advantage?
I never thought about being a global artist.
Mm.
And but once I so let me add this piece of magic to the story as well, right? Because I feel like this is very important.
Yep.
When I met my husband, and so we went maybe a month or two not knowing that the other one was a musician,
Mm-hmm.
right? But as soon as we both knew that we were musicians, and my husband is a music producer
Mm-hmm.
and sound engineer, Mr. Bounceback. It's like then we began to see the similarities in growing up, right? Him in DC, me in South Carolina. Of course, he had go-go,
Mm-hmm.
right? I got the blues, and I got jazz, I got soul, which is also infused in go-go,
Elements.
right?
Yep. Yep.
But having a mate who shares a passion and a love for what you do, and us being able to create together. So we've literally been creating together now. We're going on 24 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 24 years of now creating music together. And but the thing is, at first we were just creating music,
Yes.
right? He would create a track, and then I would go and write to it. But right before the pandemic hit, it 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 shifted into something more magical because
Mm.
I didn't have to search for words.
Mm.
If this makes sense, right? He started to create a different style of music, and
Mm-hmm.
he started to use African instrumentation and Caribbean instruments, and I feel like it unlocked something ancestral in me.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I would literally he would play some music, and I'd be there with a tablet, and you know how you write something, and you're trying to rhyme in the next line,
Mm-hmm.
right? I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to do that. These
Okay.
words would and lines would come out of me. So what I had to start doing was just recording our sessions.
Okay.
And then I go back, and if I needed to change or tweak anything for song format,
Mm-hmm.
then I would do that.
Then you'll go in and do that.
So
Okay.
it's like we've been on that wave since maybe 20, I think 2013 or something like that. And then when the
Okay.
pandemic hit, it really unlocked,
Yeah.
Pandora's box, and it became even more magical and spiritual
Mm-hmm.
and authentic.
Yeah.
And that's when the history really started to make more sense, because
Mm-hmm.
now I have these stories, and that are coming out, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me go dig into Harriet a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let me
Mm-hmm.
go dig into Zora Neale Hurston a little bit more, and
Mm.
let me go look at this period in time, the Stonewall Rebellion, because
Mm-hmm.
now it's they're literally making more sense, and they have married each other, and I
Yeah.
can't find myself doing it any other way now.
Yeah, and now you can't unknow what it is that you know about those
Yes,
people that left legacies for us
exactly,
to pull from. You know what I'm saying? And
exactly.
that's the
Yeah,
and that's the important of legacy, of course, is to be able to do just that. Is to
yeah,
be able to pull from those individuals. It doesn't mean that we have to mimic it exactly.
right.
However, we all draw inspiration, of course,
Yeah,
from
we
something.
we
And
make it our own, right? We can
that's
pull
right.
from the past and now make it relevant in a way where I can infuse myself into it, and
Hmm.
the next generation will do whatever they're going to do with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And so speaking things from next generations, you had the opportunity, you and Mr. Bounceback, your husband, had the opportunity to participate in the new Common and Pete Rock video, which was shot in the Low Country, and we are talking about Common, the rapper, the artist, and the actor, and all the
yeah,
author, and all the things that Common is, and the legendary Pete Rock from Pete
yeah,
Rock and CL Smooth, and that album is hard. I love that album. It creates the essence. It brings back the essence of hip hop, of course. And so I was listening to the gym the other day, but I was on Common's Instagram page, and I saw the video, and I'm like, oh man, there's a video for that, and I went to it, and then I watched it, and I'm like, I know them. Like, I know them folks that's in that video. And then I went over to your Instagram page and I saw that you had posted something, thank you for the opportunity or what have you. So, what was it like being around these two legends who helped shape and mold the art form of hip hop, and for you to be directly, and your husband to be
yeah.
directly injected into this process?
It is an amazing experience, and let's not get Paz right from De La Soul,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
He was
Yep,
there.
yep,
He's
yep.
on the
He sure
track.
was.
And
Yep,
we
yep,
cannot forget Bilal, right? Because
yep. Bilal
Bilal was
too.
singing on the hook.
Yeah,
And
he did
so
the hook.
all four of them actually came to
Kane.
St. Helena
Yeah.
Island. And just filming the video here. So first of all, my husband is like a serious, hip hop head.
Oh yeah. Yes, he is.
So I think he got um like first of all, he was able to have some hip hop conversations with them,
Hmm.
which is like how often, are you going to get, to talk to icons and really,
Yes.
yeah. And so that was beautiful to watch.
Hmm.
And the whole experience of them being here on the island, and, you see that fire in the
Yes.
video, right? And so we're all around the fire, and it's just it was I'm still kind of reveling in that.
Hmm.
To see
Hmm.
them have a cipher around this fire on ancestral lands on St. Helena Island. And another thing that people should know is they chose to be here and put that energy and time and money into St. Helena because we've been dealing with so many black land issues.
Yeah, y'all been
The
fighting.
land being
Yep.
taken away and developers trying to come in. And so they were very intentional about coming, which, made it even more special.
Absolutely.
And just to be tied to that, to have
Hmm.
that a part of my resume, it
Hmm.
is, it's a beautiful thing. And yeah, I'm still reveling in that.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
grateful for it. Yeah.
I know, and it was so well deserved because you all have been fighting, forever in trying to preserve and protect, right? But these developers coming in trying to put the golf courses and all these other
Yeah.
things there that, of course, are not going to benefit the descendants of these formerly enslaved individuals that cultivated and created, the culture in which white people come to visit, right?
Exactly.
The language,
Exactly.
the food, all of the different things, the festivals. It just goes to show that people are watching, people are looking, And no matter how much or how tired individuals may get, because even with doing history before us, sometimes you can get kind of burnt out. As you know, you're an artist. I mean, we all experience it in some way, shape, or form within our own craft. But there's always somebody that's watching, and sometimes it's when that person is watching and they reach out or they drop this note or they show up to St. Helena Island, like for you all. It just adds a whole nother renewed sense of ancestrally, spiritually, from a community standpoint, I'm doing what's right. You know what I'm saying? And that's just such a beautiful thing to have. And in the spirit of doing what's right, you and your husband, y'all have an initiative called Responsible Artistry. And I had the pleasure of visiting you all and the objective and its impact, and it's just absolutely amazing. Can you tell people about Responsible Artistry?
Responsible Artistry is our baby, and the inception came in 2006 as an idea about what kind of lifestyle, do we want as artists, as musicians, as human beings. And so we began to be very intentional and calculative about what festivals, what organizations we're going to partner with, who are these people? What are they doing, in their communities? Are they good people? Are they good humans? And what started as an idea, then became a magazine, right? Then it became, we had a radio show where we would share other artists who we felt did the same kind of work in their lives and in their music. And then we actually became a 501c3 organization and started to work within our local school district doing artist residencies. In the state of South Carolina, we've done some amazing artist residencies. And we even went to Belize and did our first Culture Keepers concert, where we want, that is one of our initiatives where we will take artists, Gullah Geechee artists, and we're going to go to different parts of the diaspora, and we got to meet our family. We got to make these connections and work.
And that's why I called her. That's why I called her a global artist, y'all. Because I'm telling you, it's not just domestic anymore. Like y'all did that. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. You were going to say that you were wanting to take more Gullah artists.
Yes. Take more Gullah artists, and they will be traveling with us while we're doing this tour. And so that is in the works, to be able to do that maybe late 2025 into 2026. So we're working on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Dope. So last question. Your artistry and philanthropy is obviously very eclectic, and it includes advocacy for a better and a cleaner Mother Earth as well. Can you discuss that initiative and how that also ties into your legacy? So we're expanding beyond music, you all, and we're talking about clean water, and we're talking about all these things from an environmental standpoint, in which we know is a direct threat due to development and just the lack of human responsibility. So can you talk about the advocating for a better and cleaner Mother Earth?
So one of the reasons I think, being authentic in your music and being able to tie yourself and your history into it is where the educational aspect can really take on another life, and the environmental aspect. So what we've also been working on is taking this music and create a curriculum and a syllabus, and working with educators who are, scholars in their field, and to be able to work with them and to take the music and the lyrics and build something that we can now take into the classroom. So if we're talking about protecting our land and protecting our water and protecting our earth, and that's also in the lyrics, I feel like that's it's a smoother bridge for children when you have music, because
Mm-hmm.
music is the thing that it unites all of us. And so it
Most
makes
definitely.
it that much more better and more fun to, take it into the classroom, and then also ultimately internationally. So
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity last year to go to Belize as a presenter for the International Women in Conservation Summit. And so I was able to talk about what we're doing in responsible artistry, and, talk about what we're dealing with here in the Low Country. And Belize is such a special place. And
Mm.
to leave the United States, where you're always there's anxiety, you're always anxious about something being black,
Always. Yeah.
right? And to go somewhere, and like both my husband and I talked about how much we just, like, it felt weird being that relaxed, and
Mm.
that calm,
Mm-hmm.
and the total opposite of what we feel here. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
another reason why we, need to go to these other places, if not just for our sanity,
Mm-hmm.
but to
Yeah.
save our
Real
to
talk.
save our lives, right?
Yeah.
And there's another commonality, because everybody is dealing with water and land, conservation issues.
Mm-hmm.
So it was amazing to talk to women literally from all over the world, how they are dealing with, and other artists, how they're dealing with conservation, and, weaving their artistry, into that,
Yes.
and making a difference in their communities. So it's, I'm so thankful for this part of the journey, and being able to weave it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like it's making me make more sense to myself again.
Yeah. You know, and I know that the term "better late than never" is something that's just been around for a long time. But when you look at things from the grand scheme of things, being the age in which we are, and we ain't got to
Hmm.
divulge it, uh, but we weren't born in the '90s. um, the quote unquote lateness in which some of these things are starting to come about, right? It's kind of like it was divine for it to
Hmm.
happen when it did, right? Like you just mentioned, like didn't really understand how important it was to be from that small town until 2010, or when
Right.
like you a whole adult at this point.
Exactly.
Same
Exactly.
thing for me. Like and then how you in the synergy with you and your husband as it relates to the music and how you all make music now. Like that came later on in each one of your music career. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's like it's one of those things to where, from an ageism standpoint, for someone else who doesn't think from a comprehensive point of view, they may think like, oh well, that person may have plateaued. But the reality is, we both just getting started, right?
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
it's just really getting started when you really sit back and you think
Yeah.
about it. But I think that you have to go through things in order to understand that
Yeah.
things can really be limitless if you are in control of what those things are to the best of your ability,
Yeah.
and you have a clear and concise vision with the people that support you. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And keeping those squares out your circle. That's the main thing. You got to keep
Yeah.
those squares out your circle, okay? So we can keep elevating and doing the best in which we can. So, and just for individuals to know that, with history before us, my very first film was called The American South as We Know It. And I started a series with myself, Cal Sharf, and A1 Day One Productions. And we had the pleasure of going down and interviewing Mahogane and her husband, Mr. Bounceback, as well as Miss Green down in St. Helena. And so we have had some challenges from a funding standpoint, but what we're going to do is just kind of put it out on our own and edit it ourselves. We were trying to save a little time and kind of have some buy-in from other major entities
Yeah.
to push the project. But we had a meeting this year and we were just like, you know what, we're just going to do it ourselves. It's all good. We were trying to be patient and diligent and
Yeah.
do all the grants and all that kind of stuff. But I will definitely update individuals on when that will be released, because it was such a great time coming down there. And hopefully, you would be open to me just coming down on a solo tip with my little tripod and just interviewing you about the land issues that's happening down there and the initiatives that are being put in place, because you're always fighting and everyone else is down there fighting to bring more awareness about what's happening there in the Low Country as it relates to protecting the land. So I would love to come down and do that if you're up for it as well.
Absolutely.
And I ain't seen y'all in a while either, so that'll definitely be dope. And I also want to give you a shout out. So, y'all, I was in Washington, North Carolina, and it was like 2 months back to back, and I was getting nails in my tire. Okay. And I put out, and I never asked for money, y'all, but I was so tired of paying all this money for tires month after month, because there's so much construction going on in the South. Did you know?
Exactly.
And I put it out there. Mahogane was the first person to shoot me some money. I'm like, man, I appreciate that. I appreciate that money, because I went straight, got some tires the second I got back to Charlotte after I fixed and flatted it, right? And so I want to thank you for that, sister.
Wow, well, you are absolutely welcome.
It helped.
we were happy to do it.
I appreciate it, straight up. So tell people how they can find you, so they'll know to make sure to tap in.
Tap in at Mahogane, MAHOGANEE.com, responsibleartistry.org. Responsible and artistry are spelled exactly like how they are in the dictionary.
Yep.
Right, responsibleartistry.org. And MrBounceback.org. Mr. Bounceback is MR. That's the only difference in that. And yeah, we're on social media. Responsible Artistry, at Responsible Artistry, at, let me see, how am I on okay, so Mahogane, MAHOGANEE, my last name AMIGER, yeah, at Mahogane Amigér. Or just look for the Mahogane experience with an X and not an E. And because we're trying to decolonize our words as well.
Absolutely.
Mahogany
cleansing.
With 2 E's and not a Y, right?
Right. Exactly. That is reclaiming your identity for sure. Yes. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'll leave that information in the description. So listen, sister, I greatly appreciate you taking the time. And maybe this spring, when it starts to warm up just a little bit, I would love to come down and capture the efforts in making sure that preservation and the advocacy is being shown on any of the platforms, of course, that I have. So listen, I hope that everyone is having a good start to the new year. Definitely keeping the folks that are out there in California in our thoughts.
Absolutely.
Anyone that has been negatively affected by environmental injustice as well as racial injustice, we are our thoughts and our prayers are with you. And peace and blessings, everybody.
Peace.